Howdy folks, this is Capellan from the Civ Fanatics forums, and this is another video aimed at noble level players. So it's going to be played on noble difficulty level. This is a Lonely Hearts Club game. Lonely Hearts Club games feature isolated starts where there are no AIs within contact until, basically at the very best maybe with a galley if you get your cities in exactly the right place, but probably not until you get optics. So you don't have the ability to trade techs, and everybody else is doing so and you're left by yourself. It's commonly considered a more difficult opening to deal with than being on the same landmass as the AIs, and it certainly does change your approach a little, which we'll be talking about. That's why I decided to do this game as a noble level intro, is to sort of see how our strategies change when we're alone. So our leader is Montezuma, who is aggressive, so cheap barracks and free combat 1 promotion for melee units and gunpowder units. Obviously a very strong warring tech. Not much good when you've got no one to war with, but it will be handy for dealing with barbarians. And, in the late game we will have met people. Maybe we'll need to do an intercontinental invasion, so it could come in handy then. He's also spiritual, which means cheap religious buildings, which is excellent, and no anarchy when changing civics, which is also good. So that's quite a strong trait to have. Starting technologies are very poor. Hunting and mysticism probably the worst two to start with. Agriculture and mining would be much nicer, thanks, but basically means we're going to have to research all of the key worker technologies. Unique unit, the Jaguar. Really not a particularly inspiring unique unit to begin with, certainly not inspiring in isolation. The unique building, on the other hand, the Sacrificial Altar, is a courthouse that halves the unhappiness period from whipping in slavery. So it's quite a strong building, and even in isolation, normally a courthouse in isolation is of minor use because, whilst it does reduce your cost of the city, you don't get much benefit out of the espionage because of course there's no one to use it on. Sacrificial Altar, on the other hand, does give enough of a benefit that it is worth getting to quite quickly. Okay, I'm playing No Huts, No Events, which is my standard way of playing, and this is my start position. Okay, so I'm going to turn resource bubbles on, excellent. Tile yields is on, also excellent. Okay, so immediately the question that I ask myself is it worth moving either south next to the river here or southwest here? Because either of those tiles would give me benefits that I don't get in my current position, though they would also shift me away from the plains tile, and settling on a plains tile is good because plains tiles, when they're not your settlement point, are not very strong. Okay, so that's why I've moved the scout southwards, so that I could see what I wanted to do. So I could either move one south, as I said, I'll get riverside, I'll have 2 plains hills, which is nice, and I'll have pigs, or I could settle in place. I'll still have those things, but I won't be riverside, which means I can't build levees, but I will have fresh water because of the lake. Given that we're playing at noble level, given that I don't see an extremely strong reason to move, I'm going to settle in place. I may regret this when I do it, but there you go. Okay, so we picked up rice. Well, one southwest would definitely have been a bad idea because it would have been one off the coast. One south would have brought in even more plains. So yeah, probably pretty happy with that in the end. Now I'm going to put worker as a placeholder because it's my default, but let's have a think now. It's going to take 15 turns to get a worker out. So agriculture and animal husbandry together will take 19. And mining another 7, which are probably the first 3 technologies that I'm going to want in this start. And the question I have to ask myself is, okay, well, this would be finished, so he could go over there and do that, and then by the time he's come back here and done that, I'll be ready to mine. So yeah, worker first is still okay. It usually is, it's almost always the best play, but occasionally, like in that Churchill game for instance, it wasn't. Okay, well we can end the turn now. Right, so what I'm going to do with my scout is get him to the coastline and mostly follow the coastline around for my scouting. You get a 2-tile view along the coast, and it reduces the number of directions from which barbarians can come. There are other. You can also do zigzagging to maximise the number of tiles that you see. Now, as I said, being isolated does make some changes to what you do in the game. In particular, one of the changes that or one of the effects that it has is that placement of cities changes slightly, because lacking any AI neighbours, building culture buildings becomes less vital in the sense that you don't have to worry about cultural pressure. You're never going to be plonking a city down and then frantically building a monument and a library and everything else you can find that produces culture because you're next to a creative civ. You're just never going to deal with that situation when you are isolated. So that is one significant impact. And obviously, I mean, you know, if you're not playing a Lonely Hearts Club game, you've just rolled one up, you're not going to know on turn 1, like I did, that you're isolated. You are, however, or you should, however, know that you're isolated by the time you really come to start doing serious settling. You shouldn't be, I mean, unless you're on an enormous... Oops. I should be okay, it's only a wolf. And I'm on noble, so I'll get some free wins. Like that one. Okay, yeah, you should know by the time you come to settling that you are isolated and not going to have to deal with... Ooh, silver, excellent. So we're obviously in the north of the world. Okay, so what does the fact that you are... Okay, warrior time. So, yeah. What that means is not having neighbours and knowing that you don't have to worry about neighbours when you're placing your cities. What that means for you is that you can stop and think about your placement and do the most efficient thing for placement rather than the necessary thing. So you shouldn't need to kind of go, oh well, I've got to get this site now because if I don't, you know, I need this site to block, or I need this site for some other reason. You shouldn't run into that. You should be able to kind of take your time with your city sites. You won't normally get so much freedom to pick exactly where to settle. So although there are disadvantages to being isolated and you will need to deal with them, there are some advantages that you should take advantage of. If at all possible. Okay, so apart from this central bit, we have explored our island. So at this point, let's see if there's anywhere where we haven't... So we haven't completely fog-busted there. We know that we're not going to see anyone to our north. We haven't completely fog-busted there. Okay. I'm just looking for anywhere where there might be a galley. Galleable crossing to another landmass of some kind. Because while galleys can't go on ocean, they can... Okay, I'm just going to put bronze working as a placeholder. We'll get back to that in a second. They can cross ocean if it's within your cultural borders. So, for instance, if I put a city here, I would eventually get culture here, and if there was another tile here that was coastal, I could get a galley across that. Okay, so in terms of things, well, I've got some hunting resources, I've got some mining resources, I've got some animal husbandry resources. All of these are all things that I have. I don't yet know about metals. I've got some fishing resources. I don't have fishing yet. I can't work water tiles as yet. I certainly don't see any masonry resources, so there's no point pursuing something like that right now. I have mysticism already. So I think I am going to get bronze working, which will allow me to chop, for instance, and it will also let me see if there is any copper on my island. Okay, I'll almost certainly get attacked by the wolf there, but that's fine. Oh, so there is a reason to get masonry. There you go. Because I can pick up marble. Okay, and I have now explored my entire opening island. Now what I'm going to do now is build at least a couple more warriors to start the fug bossing and to let my city grow to its maximum size. Okay, and sorry about that. Since we've now reached the position of knowing our entire island, that seems like a good place to wrap up the first part. So I'll see you in the next video.